Efendim merhabalar, hoş geldiniz diyorum. Gündemin en önemli konularından bir tanesi olan iletişim ve medyayı tam da bu konunun uzmanı olan ve çok eski dostum ve çok eski başarılı bir gazeteci Deniz Redmont'la tartışmak için kendisini ikna ettim, kırmadı geldi. Welcome Deniz. Sorry for this introduction. It's not an introduction. Every introduction is not something that can describe you actually. You're such a famous journalist, and I hope those Turkish people who do not know you will just go back and look at the fame that you
Merhaba.
had.
Merhaba. Merhabalar to all the Turks watching.
Okay. Well, thank you for this because I wanted to. For some time, I wanted to talk to someone on media, the problems, or the opportunities in the media. So this is the right momentum, and as a person who has been the AP bureau chief and in Rome and still working with lots of consulting firms,
Lots of
companies. You are the best person to tell me what's going on in the media.
See.
Okay, we shall see. All right, and also I should say that you are teaching.
I also teach, yes.
In
Some
Perugia.
of the people who have decided to go into journalism, for better or for worse, it's a totally changed profession.
Yes, it's totally changed profession. Let me just start from there. Why is it totally changed profession?
First of all, because you need a lot of technical skills, you need a lot of multilingual skills, you need a lot of search skills, you need to look for information, because what you'll be doing is trying to find information for your readers, for your listeners, for your viewers. And when I say readers, listeners, and viewers, it means that those are three different horses that you have to ride. You can't just ride one horse, which is your newspaper that was delivered or bought in the morning. You must ride those three media, plus the internet, plus other types of forms of information. So you must be able to deliver your message in various forms.
So as a journalist, we need to be complete in all of these areas, or what's going to be happening?
You have to try and multiply the platforms and the skills that you have. For example, I know that some agencies, they tell their employees, this year you must develop a new skill, whatever skill it is. If you don't know radio, you should develop radio because you have print skills. If you don't know television, then you have to develop television skills, and so on and so forth. That's the way you will be able to stay also inside the economy. Otherwise, you'll be dropped, like 1/3 of the journalists in the United States who have lost their jobs. But there's some other journalists who have better skills, who have replaced some of them.
Shall we say better or different skills?
Different skills, also flexibility, also some investigative tools, also some illustrative tools, being able to handle illustration, video, all sorts of new type of techniques in the area of sound. Those are good.
Well, talking about the techniques, let me just go back and ask you a very interesting argument on the platforms. The platforms are being discussed a lot lately.
So when we talk about platforms, we're talking about, let's say, Facebook, Google, Twitter, and all sorts of other platforms, Instagram, etc. So these platforms nowadays, they've suffered an image problem. If we remember, earlier this year, the famous Mark Zuckerberg started on his what we call the apology tour. He went to apologize. Why? Because more than 80 million people had their data stolen by the famous Cambridge Analytica scandal. They had all their data stolen, and the platform was used for also electoral means. And so because of this, everyone asked, can we trust these platforms? Can we trust Google? Can we trust Twitter? Is this news correct? And what happened? People started diminishing their trust.
Use of the platform.
And the use of the platform has been diminishing. Earlier this month, earlier this year, every time one of the people from the platforms testified in the US Congress, their stock went down. So this shows that people are having second thoughts, and we need to have verified information, trusted information, and accessible information, and also people who are literate and are able to detect what is true and what is false.
Let me just, before going further, let me just ask, make a parenthesis about these apology tours. What's your feeling about it? I mean, was it the right thing or was it a late thing? And there was a lot of discussion about that too.
The mistake here from the start was that the platform said, we are only tubes and we just carry the dialogue of people. We are not supposed to be the arbiters. We don't have to choose whether it's good or bad or pornographic or not pornographic or legal or not legal. We're just neutral. Well, little by little, extremists infiltrated, porno infiltrated, privacy got threatened, politics came in, international subversive forces moved into the area, and the platforms realized that they had to, in a way, police it. So they took a step back and they said, we're sorry. On top of that, there were privacy issues, were break-ins for this, for this information. And so they had to think twice. They kept saying, we are not publishers. We are only tubes through which all this information comes, with a very good algorithm which knows and recognizes what you will want. Well, what happened was that the people didn't like this because they were bombarded with things that they didn't necessarily want or they didn't necessarily have verified. And so as a result, they had to change their tune. And so started the apologies, which still continue.
Yes.
And in a way, those platforms have become the new publishers, the new owners, like a newspaper owner. Those platforms have become the new publishers.
Yes, I think they've lost a momentum. That's my opinion. But you have one of the words that was very critical, you have spoken, is trust. Trust is, I think, the core of the in the discussion of where the news is going and where the media is heading to. Trust is also the answer for the quality of the news, I think. What would you like to say about that?
Well, trust is a very, very precious commodity. And every year, some companies, the EU, Edelman, other communications companies, they do a survey. What is the trust? Is trust increasing in the media? Is trust increasing in business? Is trust increasing in government? Is trust increasing in NGOs? Every year there's a new survey. This year, in some countries where the press was able to investigate it, trust in the media went up, in traditional media, the investigative media.
Which is a surprise.
Which was a surprise.
Yes.
In other countries, it went down. What is the problem here? The more you want trust, the more you need to have someone who will filter that information for you. And so, in a way, you're going to have to pay for that. So many people now are adopting pay for play, or what we call
pay to read.
Pay to read.
Yes, pay to watch.
Pay to watch. So, for example, there are companies like the Financial Times. They've been trying to work for 15 years for a paying audience. Finally, this year, Financial Times is coming to about 1 million paying readers. The New York Times has about double or triple that, people who are paying. Why? Because people know that it costs to gather information.
The true information, perhaps, or the investigative.
Investigative, or something that will at least give you a little bit more than just a statement from a politician, a company, or whatever. a question that is verified by a journalist.
Okay, let me just follow up from here. Will this enable the media, the freedom of media? Because since people are willing to pay for that, so the media will have its economy stronger than it used to be. So do you think this is going to be to freedom?
So I think media freedom is a problem in the world because there are political pressures, there are commercial pressures, there are international pressures, and so freedom is always a problem. And even in the United States, which we say, oh, the United States is the country of freedom, there are problems because there is a proverb which said, freedom of the press belongs to he who owns a printing press. And so, in many cases, the freedom is something relative. But as long as there is competition, if there's competition between 2 or 3 or 4 entities that are pursuing, for example, now in the United States, New York Times, Washington Post, now the Los Angeles Times is getting prepared. Now the platforms, even Yahoo, are trying to get together news journalists. So the more competition there is, the more people will have to choose from, and the more freedom there will be.
So we've been talking about the two sides. One, the media, and we just bypassed the target audience. What's happening in the target audience? I mean, they now are willing to pay for more and for better. Who are they and how are they? How they have differed?
So the new target audience are, I would think, the mass market audience, which are the consumers who maybe can't pay for news. And then there are the more literate strata of people who can pay for news.
So you're dividing it to two?
So we divide it into two main, those perhaps who can't pay, who are just looking at gossip, all sorts of film, radio, TV, entertainment, and those who are looking for serious news you can use. So that's one of the target audiences.
Is this the literate or illiterate? I mean, are we talking about a divided world of people who are educated and not educated?
I think we're talking about that problem but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're stuck in the uneducated or that you're stuck in the educated. It's a very, very flexible and moving type of target. That's one thing about the target. The second thing is, if you trust a brand, and this brand does do things for you, that brand will speak to you. So many brands, for example, will take their traditional trusted audience and they will play to them things that are of interest to them, and they themselves, the brands, will create their own newsrooms. So, for example,
we're talking about the corporate world, right?
Corporate world, like Nike, like Önemi, like coffee brands, like automobile brands. These companies have taken many people who have journalism skills and they have hired them, and they have maybe 10, 20, 30 people in a newsroom that react to any news that will be of interest to their consumer. So whether it's electrical cars for Volkswagen or the price of energy for
expertise journalism. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, expertise journalism, which is now not just offered by the newspapers,
but also by
the companies. So this is a new business, and so maybe you will say, yes, it's a world where there's fewer journalists, or let's say the journalists that are skilled are few and far between. But the companies can come in with their also participating in the information game.
So what do you expect? Will there be consolidation in the media groups? Namely, I mean, the newspapers or the television stations in this economy, and Are they going to be divided into a couple and big companies?
It depends. Many of these groups, we know they're conglomerates. So we know about Rupert Murdoch, we know about Time Warner, we know about Comcast, we know about these big groups. Each of these groups are integrated vertically. So they have entertainment, radio, TV, newspapers, internet, and then they also might have other businesses which are attached to it, which are industrial business or whatever. As long as there is competition, these groups will subsist. They could thrive even because people are quite interested in what is happening. But it will evolve. For example, we now know that generalist television is diminishing in terms of audience, but people are going to look at Netflix or at other type of television productions which are produced by new players. So we have to constantly be attentive as to what we're paying for and what we're receiving, because the tastes of the audience need to be monitored, and the companies are those that will be monitoring the audience.
Let me ask. I wanted to ask you about this opinion and the news. The difference between in ICBC, a lot of opinionated programs, or according to me type of journalism. Instead of journalism, news journalism. Will this continue on, or is this
I think this will continue. Why? I think we have to be very frank about this. Opinion costs very little money. It's very easy to have talking heads, whether it's in the US, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in the Middle East. People sit in a room, in a salon, and they go the pro and the con, the pro and the con. And the cost of this is very little. The question is, who is watching? And is it people who are watching because they want to validate, to confirm their own opinions? Or is it people who actually are going to have their opinions changed by giving this information? So I still think that some of the traditional rules of separating fact and opinion are important for people, because people hear the immediate development about the crash, the accident, the bridge that breaks in Genoa, the attack in a country that is torn by war, etc., but they don't understand what it means. So I think there will be 3 stages. Spot news, analysis, which is where you pay the journalist to find out, and finally opinion, which is a little bit trying to make up your mind after listening to the analysis. But already now we have in so many countries channels that, either because of the political situation or the economic situation, let's say like Fox News in the United States, we know that that represents a certain sector in the United States. You will see in other countries it's the same thing.
It's the same thing going on. I was just coming up to that, and my last question is about it, the polarized journalism, and actually Turkey is being affected by that as well. But you have such deep experience in Europe in the past, and you are still in the media. What do you expect that will happen in the near future or the future?
Well,
will this continue, this polarization?
I think the polarization is going to continue for the next couple of years. Why? Because right now in Europe we're going into European elections. European elections will be a big test to see whether populism is advancing, is standing still, or is decreasing. That's the big issue. Will traditional parties, trains of opinion, continue or not? And that will decide on polarization. What has happened now, and that what is being discussed now, is that the traditional parties have not been able to react to polarization or to extremism. Those parties, like the traditional Democrats or the traditional Republicans or the traditional Christian Democrats or the traditional Socialists, have not been able to react in terms of populism. They haven't been able to offer a credible alternative. If these parties are silent, then we will have a battle of extremisms, and we will have more hatred, more conflict, and perhaps even a certain amount of hot wars, not just Syria, but other types. We can see this is happening in the Balkans a little bit. We can see this is happening in certain parts of Europe, such as possibly Catalonia and other places like that. And so we have to be careful that this does not degenerate. And the main mystery here is who will mediate and who will calm the waters and bring people to the negotiation table.
Well, thank you so much. This was a tour of media. It's like 101 media for the the developments. But what I have seen from what you have said, there are a couple of changes acting in the same time, and so that's why it's very difficult for us to grasp what's going on in the media and also in the world, which is all related to each other, right? The technology, the international arena, what's going on, and also the traditional and the modern media.
So these are we've discussed some of the trends, but there's many other trends. There's the effect of artificial intelligence. There's the fact that voice is now going to be a main factor. We'll ask Google Assistant or we'll ask Amazon Echo, go and get me this information, and they'll get it. Already 20% of the Americans are doing this. And then everything will be live, as we know, because people do Periscope or other things. And the other thing which relates to politics is that election campaigns are 24/7 now. In the United States, in Turkey, in Europe, whether it's Italy, Spain, or whatever, politicians are in campaign 24/7. Usually it was only every 3 years, every 4 years, whatever. Now it's every day, all day. So it's a new world, and it's a new challenge for journalists and for companies, because companies have a big chance to be able to communicate their message in this new world where everything is not always clear.
Independently and not clear, yes. Well, thank you so much, and
thank you
for coming. Çok teşekkürler. Yani gerçekten bir medya dersiydi. Umarım sizler de keyif almışsınızdır. Dennis Redmont gerçekten yakalaması zor bir gazeteci. Ama buradayken onun bu şekilde zamanını çalmak beni hem çok mutlu etti hem de umuyorum gazetecilik okuyan arkadaşlarımız da bunu bir ders niteliğinde izlerler. Hoşça kalın diyorum.